Thank you for tuning in once again to Gods, Demons, and Magic. This is your host, Sri Sachinandan Das. We've been discussing over the last few episodes the daemons of ancient Egypt and their position within ancient Egyptian astrology. Let us now journey back in time and get an idea of the worldview of these ancient priests. They saw that beyond matter or beyond material creation, there was a God, just as we think in the Abrahamic traditions or in the Hindu traditions, of a one transcendent supreme God which exists beyond creation as the source of creation. And in the ancient Hellenistic and Egyptian worldview, this God was beneficent. He was very kind, and essentially he cared for everyone. It's sort of like a divine source of love which diffuses kindness and gentle affection. And then within creation, you have a sort of secondary level of gods. You have the demiurge, or the creator god, and you have the various gods within the heavens, the demigods, which are closely associated with the planets. So for the ancient Egyptian priest, astrologer, or even just average person, looking up at the sky and seeing the fixed stars and seeing the planets, for them they were directly looking up at the gods, at the sub-gods, and the position of these gods was essentially they order the universe. They work on behalf of that supreme, transcendent, beneficent God, and sort of function or create the complex machinery of material existence. And you may have seen these old mechanical globes where you have oftentimes a beautiful golden globe, and around it is the machinery of the universe. And when you turn the crank or turn the globe, then automatically the planets begin moving in their spheres. And so in this way, that's sort of how they saw the universe, that it's a compact universe surrounded by, a brilliant, transcendent reality. And we as living beings are sort of trapped within this mechanical globe, and it's the movement of the stars and planets along their fixed paths that is actually, in a highly complex and sophisticated way, is conducting the karma or the fate of all the living entities within that globe. And so we're very much within a machinery under the control of these various lower gods who then order the universe. And so looking up at the night sky, you're directly seeing the gods and their sort of divine role as the conductors of fate. And yet, between us and these gods, there's a great distance. In fact, we can't, from the Egyptian perspective, we don't directly deal with those particular gods. Rather, we deal with them through their mediators. And the mediators are really sub-gods. They're also, in a sense, gods, but they're sort of halfway between gods and humans. And they're known as the daemons. And so the daemons are sort of like, they can be guardian angels. They can be mediators between humans and gods. In fact, as mentioned before, they're considered the ones who bring you into your body at the time of conception. And they put you into the body at a very specific time. And their worldview was not fatalistic. It's not that you're simply trapped within your fate, or you're trapped within this great machinery that you have no escape from and no freedom within. Rather, it was understood that there's freedom of choice. The best way I can explain it, it's almost like you're like a surfer on the ocean. You're riding on top of a wave, and the wave, to a large degree, is sort of pushing you beyond your control, and there's nothing that you can do about it. It's far stronger than you. And yet, even while on that wave, you can simultaneously choose which direction you're going to go. And you'll see when surfers actually surf, to a small degree, they're creating another wave. They're pushing the water themselves. So it's very much like that, and it's very similar to the Vedic or Indian idea of karma, in that even though while doing actions in this world, for the most part, you're being driven forward by your karma. But as you experience that karma or that fate, you also have the freedom of choice of how you're going to react to it. And then how you react to it, that's creating your future karma. And so, in a sense, you're constantly being pushed forward by this wave, but you do have freedom to move within it and to essentially choose how that wave is going to push you in the future. And so, in addition to your own personal freedom of choice, these ancient Egyptians also believed in divine intervention. You could go to the supreme god, or you could go to the lesser gods, the planets, or you could even go to your daemon. And so this is one of the reasons that the daemon was considered so important within astrology. the daemon was very much your personal link to the gods. And so you could beseech the daemon and actually request the daemon, or you could also approach the gods directly in some cases and actually ask them to intercede within your fate and to change your karma. And so the daemons had the power to actually do this. And it's very interesting that you'll see the system is very much active, even alive today. Like where I live, there's a Hindu temple very close in Malibu, and you can actually see, you go into like the lower section of the temple, and they have little statues or deities of all the planets. There's a certain section set aside for worshiping the planets, and so and there's a priest. I'm not sure, so I've never really seen the priest there, but apparently you can make an appointment, or sometimes the priest is there, and they'll actually do rituals for someone who wants to counteract, or we might say request, that particular planet to be merciful and to not allow that karma or that fate to fructify. So even today, in certain places in the world and in certain religions, people actually beseech these same planets to remove their fate or to intervene within their karmic destiny. And so in ancient Egypt, they did that, but primarily they would approach through the daemon, and specifically through one's personal daemon, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. And the daemon, in many ways, is your personal link to the gods. As we mentioned, the daemon, he pushes you into your body at a specific time, and so it's that time which is sort of like you have this wave of karma, or this wave of fate or destiny pushing forward in this highly complex movement of time in which all the living beings within this world are experiencing their fate. And it's incredibly complex how all of their fates are interwoven. And yet the daemon will bring you into the body at the very specific time that you will then experience a certain life being pushed forward by your personal karma. So the timing that you enter the body is very important. And if one were to look at the night sky, look at the stars, or the positions of these gods and planets, at the moment that you're brought into the particular body by the daemon, that is actually, at least from the perspective of Vedic astrology, that moment of conception is considered the most accurate chart from which to perform a reading. Of course, most people have no idea what time they were conceived, and therefore you'll see that most people will use the time of birth itself, which is also a very accurate chart. And what you're doing, essentially, in an astrological chart is taking a picture of the night sky and then utilizing that picture to judge what is the trajectory of that individual's fate. And it's important to remember that over time, that individual's fate does change to certain degrees, because there is that freedom of choice. And so after, especially as one gets older into their 30s, 40s, 50s, then your fate may be significantly different than what it was at the time of birth. But nevertheless, you'll still be under the strong control of those particular karmas or fates which are coming upon you and conducting your life. And so it is the daemon who brings you in at that precise moment. It's kind of like the lord of your chart, or the lord of your fate, on behalf of the greater God. And it is that daemon then that you can beseech to actually overcome your particular fate and to ask for the intervention of the gods. And what is the interest of the daemon? What does the daemon want you to do with your life? The daemon wants you to purify yourself. It wants you to make advancement, ultimately spiritually, beyond material existence totally. It wants you to move towards enlightenment. It wants you to move towards a deeper understanding of the divine. And so really that's what the daemon wants. He wants you to essentially purify yourself and to overcome sin and to overcome degradation into matter or into the flesh and to contemplate the immortality of the soul. And so the daemon is in a sense like a spiritual guide and is eager to give you inspiration. So oftentimes your daemon will be trying to lead you upward. It's very much like the concept of the guardian angel. Is watching over you, looking over you, and wants you to succeed spiritually and to purify yourself and to rise up from degraded consciousness and to essentially come into more harmony with God. But with the Egyptian concept of the daemon, it's like a guardian angel who is directly involved with your fate and who acts as a mediator between you and the planets. And the more that you are then listening to your daemon or in harmony with the daemon, you're actually, in a sense, making religious or spiritual advancement. And that's why for these priests at that time, astrology was more than just sort of an occult practice or form of divination. It was a religion. It was a religion of interaction with the gods through your daemon and purification of yourself and trying to listen to the inspiration and wisdom coming from your daemon. And the daemon is there encouraging wisdom and encouraging righteousness. And if you don't listen to that and don't follow that, then you'll be dragged down by the passions, which are sort of lower forms of daemons. You'll be dragged down into lust and anger and greed. And in a sense, you lose your freedom as you're dragged down into this consciousness. And so there's a sense where one must surrender to one's daemon and consent to follow the personal guidance of that daemon. It reminds me of like in these old Looney Tunes cartoons, you have like a Porky Pig or Elmer Fudd, and he's got these two angels on his shoulders, and one is sort of he's got an angel and a demon, and the angel is very much, encouraging him, don't kill the rabbit, and, you should be kind, and you should be forgiving and compassionate, just let it go. Well, as the demon is like trying to seduce him, right? You must kill him, and you have to get revenge, and, oftentimes the demon is like, he's laughing in a very wicked way. And you'll see, Elmer Fudd will listen to the demon, and then he'll become like a demon, even though his face gets red and he kind of grows like horns or something. So it's very much like that. You have these from the Egyptian perspective would be personal daemons, and the one on the right shoulder or the left shoulder, whoever's the angel, that's actually your personal daemon, the one in charge of your fate. Whereas you also have lower daemons, which are, in a sense, control of the passions of the body and in control of lower emotions such as anger and fear and hatred, and they'll try to degrade you. And so that's very much closer to sort of the Abrahamic conception of the demon, the actual evil spirit which is trying to degrade one's soul. So in addition to dealing with one's personal daemon, one was also expected to understand their nature through astrology, to understand their fate through astrology, in a sense to align themselves with that fate and accept that fate and sort of educate themselves about their own nature, and in this way come into harmony with the universe. Because again, this greater harmony of the universe is really the movement of the gods themselves. And the gods themselves and the way they structure and organize the universe in this complex web of fate is also in harmony with that one transcendent, beneficent God. So the more that you bring yourself in harmony with the universe, you're essentially bringing yourself into harmony with the divine. And by doing that, you're elevating your consciousness, you're raising your consciousness. So the idea was that if you understand your fate and you choose to live according to that fate, and you understand your personal nature, and you're willing to accept that nature and to accept your fate and to move with, the river of time rather than against it, then you become much more harmonious with life itself, and you become peaceful and gentle and renounced, etc. And in this way, your consciousness is elevated. So it's almost like, it reminds me of the sort of the Chinese idea you find in Taoism of sort of being in harmony with life itself and with nature and sort of moving with nature rather than against nature. So you're in a sense supposed to be in harmony with the will of the gods and with the entire system of fate and the mechanics of the universe and move with them. And this is very similar to the Vedic or Indian concept of dharma, coming in alignment with one's own dharma or nature. And the dharma of something means its inherent quality, such as like water is wet, or water moves in that fluid way, or fire is hot and bright. And so this way, that's the dharma of that thing. So we each have a dharma associated with our material existence within this world, and so one is meant to bring themselves in harmony with that dharma. And to ultimately act in that dharma, But in the Bhagavad Gita explains to perform that dharma, or to perform our worldly nature, but as a service to God or in harmony with God. And in this way it becomes purified. It becomes a system. It becomes a process of yoga or unification with the divine. And so this ancient system of astrology was taken very much in the same way, that you take your material existence in a sense that you're condemned to live according to the laws of fate, which you're subjected to, and then you understand it clearly through astrology, and then you live in harmony with it in such a way that you're elevated in consciousness, and that you see sort of the greater purpose and the divine intelligence within creation itself. And so the ancient system of astrology was very much a system of spiritual elevation. And the more advanced in consciousness you became through this process, by living in harmony with your fate, understanding the movements of the gods and being in harmony with the movements of the desires, the will of the gods, as well as listening to that inner guidance of one's daemon and being uplifted through that guidance, listening to the angel on one's shoulder and being purified, and developing qualities such as selflessness, humility, overcoming the qualities of the demon on one's shoulder, overcoming the lower emotions and the physical desires. As one became more elevated in consciousness, then you became better at practicing astrology. The more you became in harmony with the will of the gods, the more you're able to understand the will of the gods and see what the will of the gods is for other people. And so astrology was really one's ability to practice astrology was a reflection of the elevation of one's consciousness and living in harmony with their daemon. And these priests, they not only practiced this system themselves, but they helped other people practice it as well. They would be astrologers and priests for the general mass of people and guide them spiritually to be in harmony with the gods and to follow the wisdom of their particular daemon. And in addition to that, they would utilize astrology in a very practical manner, helping them to find auspicious times in which to do important things in life. So say, for example, for getting married or for conceiving a child or for opening a business, you would want to find an astrologically auspicious moment. And since you're taking advantage of your ability to understand this complex machinery of fate, to find a time when the fate will be the most beneficial at which to start something new. And this system is still very much going on in the world today. Astrologers all over the world will assist in timing events. And within Vedic astrology, or Jyotish, there's a very complex system of finding auspicious moments known as muhurta. And within that science, these muhurtas, these moments that you're looking for, these auspicious points in time, they're actually very, very rare, and it's quite difficult to find an extremely auspicious moment. But finding such a moment and beginning something at that moment, it bodes very well. It's very auspicious. It means that whatever you start, it's going to bear very good and strong fruit. Also, you'll see in Vedic astrology, as well as in Babylon and Persia, for the performance of religious rituals, had to be timed astrologically. There's very specific moments that you're supposed to perform a sacrifice. And so astrologers would time those moments as well. In fact, that's one of the origins of astronomy, right? Is the timing of religious rituals and sacrifices. In fact, within the Vedic tradition, even the chanting of certain mantras and certain prayers, one has to follow very strict rules of ritual purity. And the mantra can only be chanted at a certain place and also at a certain time. So there's a sense in which ritual purity is not only one of cleansing with water, but one of actually being at a pure time. So there's a sense in which astrology was a way to influence ritual purity. There's a pure moment, and the astrologer finds that particular moment for performing certain forms of worship. And you'll see also, generally, within the Vedic tradition, the exception to this is the worship of the Supreme Lord, or the worship of God, is not bound by those ritual timings for purity. Rather, you'll always see that the worship of the supreme God, who again is described, as we mentioned, in the Egyptian tradition as being beneficent, he doesn't really care about principles of time and place. Like, whenever you want to pray to the supreme God, you could just pray to him anytime and he accepts it. Whereas when you're dealing with the gods like the planets or the lower gods, then they'll only accept prayers and rituals and offerings and sacrifices that are done at very precise moments and in very precise conditions of purity. And so for that reason, astrology was the science of the priesthood. It was their tool. It was something they used in their own spiritual elevation and living in harmony with their own existence, as well as guiding others to do that as well. And they used it as a tool in the performance of sacrifice and ritual and prayer. So please join us next time, and we're going to discuss more one's personal daemon and the tradition of finding it within one's astrological chart. So thank you very much for listening. If you found value in this, please like and subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes, please visit srisachinandana.com/iTunes and leave a positive review. Thank you very much, and we hope that you'll join us next time on Gods, Demons, and Magic.